Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As language learners, I'm sure we're all very familiar with taking a break. Sometimes you get busy, sometimes you get burnt out, or maybe you stop taking lessons at school. For one reason or another, that language that you love gets put to the side as you concentrate on other parts of your life. And then the longer you stay without the language, the harder it becomes for you to make it a part of your life again, and soon you can find yourself wondering how to start again. If that is you, fear not, as I'm going to give you some tips on how to get back into learning a language after a break. So the first thing to note is that it's completely okay and normal to take a break, even a really long one. There's no point in feeling guilty if it's been months since you last touched a textbook. It's very easy to fall into the pit of thinking, what if I hadn't stopped learning that language? I'd be fluent now. But that doesn't help you now. You need to be forgiving of yourself and understand that the past is in the past. All you can do now is look forward and think about what you're going to do from this moment onwards. When I started to learn Japanese, I was completely infatuated by the language and I poured all of my efforts into it, forgetting about French. I was able to keep up my level for a while because I was also learning it in school, but as soon as I stopped learning French in school, I had basically no contact with the language for over a year. Then, when I decided that I wanted to improve my French again, I found that I'd forgotten a lot. If you've watched any of my other French study videos, you may have noticed me complaining a lot about not remembering basic things in French. When I tried to pick it up again, it was horrible. I was struggling to even introduce myself, and even counting became difficult. And the worst part was that all of it seemed just at the tip of my tongue. Like I know that I know it, but the words just weren't coming out. And it was really frustrating that I spent all this time studying this language just to forget things. It took a while to get back in the swing of things, and I ended up dedicating a large amount of time to French, neglecting my Japanese. When I started to notice the same things were happening to my Japanese, I really began to realize the merits of balance in my language learning. As long as I wanted to learn both French and Japanese, I'd have to find some way to balance my learning of them, because pausing one language to learn another was clearly not the way to go. The first thing you need to do to get back on track is figure out where you are now. If you've stopped learning for a long time, chances are you've forgotten quite a few things. It can be hard to figure out exactly what you've forgotten, and you do not have to pour hours into the stage, but go through some old notebooks or look through the chapters of a textbook that you've already gone through and see how much of it you know. The first chapters or pages should still seem simple, if you've gotten a significant way through the book, but you should notice a point where you're starting to recognize less and less of the material. If it gets to the point where you only recognize 60% of what you see, that should be where you pick up. There's no need to go too far back, because forgetting some things is natural, no matter how much you study a language. You should also try and figure out what areas of the language have deteriorated the most. For me, since I was no longer speaking French, my speaking ability obviously got a lot worse, and my writing also suffered. My listening remained alright because I would occasionally watch some French YouTubers and shows, and I would occasionally read the news in French, so my French reading was also doing okay. When I restarted learning French, I knew that these were the areas that I was weakest in, so I'd have to focus on them the most, and that is what I did. So now that you know where you are, it's time to figure out where you want to go. It can be encouraging when you're restarting to make some big goals. Think about why you love the language and what made you want to learn it in the first place, and set goals that reflect your ideal relationship with the language, whether that be you living or working in the country that speaks it, studying there, or speaking to your family that speaks that language, whatever inspires you whenever you pick up that textbook. Then you need to break it down into medium-term goals. These should be for the next year, quarter. And finally, you need some short-term goals. Your first goal will probably be getting back to the level you were at before, which hopefully will not take long. This is a bit vague, so you should specify that you want to reach that page in the textbook that you left off, or finish remaking notes for all the pages in that vocab book where you felt you needed a review. Other short-term goals can be finish an Anki Deck or Memrise course, complete 20 lessons on Duolingo, or read 5 chapters in a book. Basically using any resources that you have on hand. This reminds me of an important point, which is to not buy new resources when you're restarting a language, unless you're 100% sure that it was only the resource's fault that you couldn't keep up your routine. In most cases, the problem is our motivation or discipline, or external life circumstances like illnesses, work, or school that make us not keep studying a language, and buying a new textbook or language course will not change anything. You first need to get back into the swing of studying regularly before you start to consider starting something new, so that you know you'll be making good use of your new purchase. You should try to give a fair chance to any resource you have, even if it isn't quite your style of learning. For example, I don't particularly enjoy going through the Tobida textbook the way it was intended to be gone through. I find most of the vocabulary a bit too easy, and I quite like coloured pictures, so it's quite dull to go through. That being said, I do find the exercises quite useful, and the grammar sections with explanations are very good since I'm very weak in grammar, so I still use the textbook and I still take notes from it, even if the notes are not in order and I skip through a lot of the book. The only way to turn your goals into results is with a plan or a routine. This should incorporate the different aspects of your goals while not being too ambitious to avoid burnout. You need to figure out a balanced schedule for all the languages you're learning, if they're multiple, and all of the skills within a language: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. This is a lot easier to do when you figure out what resources you're going to use, so you should start off by making a long list of every resource you have available. This could be websites, textbooks, books, apps, courses, even shows and movies. Then add what skill you're training for each resource. Decide what time of day you'll find best for studying. It doesn't have to be the same time each day, and it can be something as short as 5 minutes in a lunch break. And finally, slot in a balanced range of resources to study. Make sure to be as specific as possible with what you'll be doing. For example, say review 10 cards from my grammar deck on Anki, rather than just Anki in grammar. Or complete 2 vocabulary exercises from my textbook, rather than just use my textbook. Keep in mind that routines are meant to be reviewed and altered periodically, so don't feel stuck if the first routine you made for yourself is boring or hard to stick to. You can change the resources, the times, the duration. You're completely free and in control of your own learning. I've made a video on making language study routines on my channel, which will be linked in the description. So if you want a more detailed description on how to do that, check out that video after this one. This doesn't mean that you have to go back to the beginning of your textbook and start all over again. That would just be harmful to your learning, because not only are you wasting time, you're also boring yourself, and that will make you not want to study anymore, which was the problem that led you to where you are now in the first place. You should use the position you determined in the first stage, the point in your textbook or notebook where you realised that things were getting a bit rusty. If it was a textbook, you can start by redoing some of the exercises and making new notes on unfamiliar grammar and vocabulary. If it was a notebook, for example a vocabulary notebook, you can distill its contents by rewriting only the words you don't know onto another page or into another notebook. Then you assess your progress in relearning the words or grammar. You should use a spaced repetition software, physical flashcards, or some kind of flashcards app if you don't already, such as Anki or Memrise, and put all the things you learn in there. It'll be easier to see whether or not you're improving by how many reviews you have to do each day, and simply seeing how you feel about the cards as they show up on your screen. And then all you have to do from here is keep going and watch your language skills improve. It may not be easy to not stop again, but what is most important is that every time you stop, you come back and continue learning again. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you found it useful, please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.